Blessings, welcome forward to Reasonings right here at the Tree of Life. I'm your host, Jerome Sage Butler. Yeah, back in the bamboo paradise. Yeah, up on the mountain. Yeah, giving thanks, gratitude to the Most High for this experience I have been gifted with to be able to expound on a few issues, of spiritual significance, simplicity, eh, and just the natural way of things, as clearly as the divine has placed it upon my heart. Blessings to you, for continuing to like, subscribe, and share. Yeah, from Sealer Media to True Life Television Network. The experience is continuous. The Most High God is good to us by blessing us with great interactions with wonderful people. Sometimes a few not so wonderful interactions, but hey, still great people. And the beauty is we are here in this wonderful medium of social media to be able to share the information. So never take for granted the gifts that we've been given, the blessings, the abilities we've had to be able to express and expound on anything. Yeah? From the most simplest to the deepest, most complex of issues. Blessings once again. It's wonderful to see you. My current offering is on a specific kind of expression, a language, a hidden language, a language well used throughout history, still being used in this very moment. Indeed, maybe even the first language, the first record of the consciousness of presence. What is it I'm talking about? Exploring symbolism, the mysteries of symbolism. And before we get into some of the forms of symbolism, because there are many forms of symbolism, let's be clear. There are those that really point to kind of just a literary understanding, a way to see the poetic, even a sort of prosaic quality in one's experience. A symbolic language in representation of mother, father, and child. A symbolic unit of the presence of God on earth, the family. The essence of nature, the symbolism of the unified cosmos. There's some symbolism that are simple and represents clearly the language that it's wrapped up, imbued into, the thought it's expressing, the idea or the fact it's expressing. So in the many forms of symbolism, we take some comfort, or a deep amount of comfort, in knowing that symbolism has a lot to do with the human experience. Before we get into the very source or the very essence of this reasoning, we will, just define a little of the essence of what symbolism is. Well, the symbolic is basically a representation of deep internal core concepts, ideas, perceptions on things, life, or the very experience of life, translated into a condensed, image. In language form, it's called sigil. And there's image-based constructs that are symbolic of deep, centered, concentrated ideas, ideals, outlooks. And there is the current symbolism of like hand signals and hand symbols and the signs within these symbols, religious symbolism and such. So it is deep and intense. So it's really basically supplanting maybe an object, person, a thing, an image for a deeper correlating idea. Now, many people would say in the regular context rather of symbolism, they would say that the hidden meaning really has not much to do with the symbol. And that's where I would differ. I would say it has a lot to do with the symbol. There aspects of the symbol, the very image. There's aspect of the thing, the person, that is imbued in the deeper essence of what the symbol is really about, of what the hidden meaning is really about, of what the real core essence, ethics, moral, or the internal creed is really about. There is some essence that is in plain sight, that is an attribute, because most things don't necessarily have one nature or has one attribute or one manifestation of its nature. So there are aspects abstracted in the specific context to symbolize the intent, the intended purpose, right, of the people who convened these, of the people who basically conjured and created these symbols. So let us further, enter into the very essence of symbolism, symbolic meaning, and what it's really all about. Especially as it relates to us in the now, in the current experience we're having. Excuse me. Okay. From as far as I can see from my historical analysis of life, I've come to understand that symbolism, or the symbolic language, has been essentially the first pictorial, the first, visualization of our core concepts. It is true that essentially our communication was through the essence of sound. Sounds connotes the emotions, the intentions. The intended meanings are deeply espoused and connected with the objects, connected with what our desires are holding. So if we wanted food, there is a symbolic meaning of putting hands to mouth, or the essence of eating to symbolize that we need food, right? The essence of rubbing the belly, of being hungry, of nourishment, of needing nourishment. So there's a basic symbolic meaning. So therefore, when we pictorialized, or we recorded, or we organized our first sets of core instincts, it was a symbolic pictorialization, because life wasn't just concepts without form. It's not just utility without aesthetics. There's an essence to why symbols carry the intense imbued meanings they do, because they represent a core natural function that is not just mental or psychological, but is deeply physical, spiritual, manifested. It is a function of the cosmic experience. So the pictorialization of our lifestyles, of our beliefs, of our thinking, our thought in early man was the essence of symbolic meaning. So the essence of seeing what a symbol represents was knowing that a symbol for water could very much be a brook, a spring, but it could also be a traveler's palm. Because in culture, in my culture, and in cultures, the symbols of things are different. That's why the meanings are connected to the environment, the people's evolution, the people's sense of reality, what they see in the visual, what their eyes purview. So traveler's palm could be a symbol for water in my culture. For those who do not know what traveler's palm is, you can Google it, right? It is a name to us. So there's always some Latin name for European research and to do it in the that stuff, right? The botanical stuff. Traveler's palm store lots of water because when the rain falls, right, water is stored within the crevices of the leaves. So the leaves are grown, there are lots of grooves, right? So very weary travelers who are very thirsty on a long travel in Jamaica would cut these palms and be able to drink fresh, clean rain water, right? Naturally. So that would be a symbol for water. So if you would see a part of our state's representation with a traveler's palm, and people would say, well, it is symbolic or synonymous with the fact that, oh, there's these nice palms there. But the deeper intrinsic meaning is that they could be saying to you, well, this is the land of, water, right? That there is rainfall a lot. There's lots of rainfall. This is a very rich and green, very wet environment. So it's not just a meaning of, oh, it's green in terms of, oh, this is the plant which is the most recognizable in the environment, but that the plant can be symbolic of something deeper. So the language are these imagery, right? Now, a lot of symbolic language, when people begin to reference it, they would always go to, let's just say, the hieroglyphics of Egypt. And when one goes into the hieroglyphics of Egypt, one could see, because that's what is widely presented to us as a reference to such italics and such symbolic language, having meaning in terms of literal sentences and correlations in life and choices and such. That symbolic meaning in hieroglyphics have been handed to us as a template to examine symbolic imagery in terms of the spoken word and in terms of carrying intent and a correlation and a storage of information. Now, people might say, so why is that symbolic? Well, we use italics, right? A specific design structure called, the alphabet, a correlation of sounds, and we image that alphabet now, in certain symbols, right? From A to Z, right? So now when we want to correlate information, and let's say when we want to decode, or simply research, study information, right? Am I still with you? Are you still with me? When we want to correlate and study information, we still have to basically be taught how to decipher, right? Yeah, because it is really a code. So we have to learn to decipher, which is basically learn to read and write, right? And spell. And that's a whole other language, but we go to the spelling at another level, at another time. But we have to learn to decipher these italics and then be able to translate through the understanding what the core information, the meaning, the hidden meanings are within these words, right? That's what we call them now. Before we had these italics through the European construct and even through the development of even so-called modern cultures throughout the earth, the essence is we had a symbolic meaning. And the symbolic meaning, or the symbols rather, was the supplanting of the words. They carried the deep intent, right? And the clarity of information. So the people within the environment understood the symbols because they are connected to their lives. The symbols are essentially connecting points of their reality. So the symbols are not just something that is not just a state of acquisition of a consciousness, right? Which we'll examine later too, right? So the essence of the symbolic is that it has to have a reference to the actual life that we're living, right? And early humans, when they pictorialize language, it was because language was visual as well as it was spoken, right? Now developed itographs and iconography, right? And the italics, right? The letters and such, take us away from the essence that letters representing sounds was mirrored by images representing sounds, representing concepts and ideas. So symbolic language, as we explore the essence of symbolism, was naturally or is naturally the language of the human experience. We have to see it, feel it, know it, for it to have construct, consequence, importance within our reality. It just has to be that way. That is how it comes to have meaning, why we come to represent meaning through these images. So as we forward now into the reasoning a little bit more, we've basically examined the core essence of what the symbolic is. Now, as we further into its relevance in the now context, let us look at why should we be considerate of the images or symbolic meanings if it is now that we have italics, if now that we have words, right? Well, let's do a little bit of journeying into that and then we can go a little further. Okay, so the fact that we have words is one good thing. Let's examine it a little further because these things are symbolic. You have some words that are compendiums, right? They are compressed ideas. Hallelujah. Deeply compressed ideas, right? So essentially, people in, like, say, my culture would say big words, right? Or deeply intellectual words or hidden words, secretive words, right? Words that are not in the regular lingua or the regular colloquial tongues, things that are not often words rather that are not often spoken about, or even concepts, that are contained in these words and that are not often spoken about. So let's even look at that. The symbolic suggests that the hidden meanings, right, is still within these words, certain specific words, and then there are similitudes within sigils, right? Now, sigils essentially are when you condense an idea in word form or image and word form and create a symbol. Now, this is going to correlate a lot of the reason why I'm doing this video. Now, in the modern age, because a lot of the symbolism, like I said, and the expression of deep core thoughts and ideas is now imbued into italics contained within the alphabet, which represents sounds which carry forward meaning and energy, the intensity of thoughts, right? So we feel like, okay, these deeply image oriented pictorial symbolism is of no more meaning to us, and play no part in our reality. Well, the first debunking I would want to say about that is that when you look at most logos, I'm an artist, and I know what visual artists do, hallelujah, in the creating of those images. They are deeply imbued concept in light, shadow, rhythm, contrast, balance, tone, resonance. It is deep spiritual vibration, deep intellectual, spiritual intent, and in some cases even satanic intent that is imbued in those images. They are sigils, right? So the symbolic language is logos. And logos don't only represent companies, right? Because you have logos that represent individuals, right? Because as individual becomes a part of what is the current world culture and the establishment, they begin to use symbolic meanings. Now, you know that ranks within like army and military and within organization is also a symbol. Most people might not know that because they look at the ranks or the positions as just responsibility, but no, they're symbols of the alignment of energy and how things function within these organizations. So you're just basically functionaries. So individuals then have a symbol, an image, which is basically your icon, your iconography, right? Your symbolic language, that when the others who are in the power are in the organization of power see you, they know the context in which you are, the position in which you are, right? The role in which you fill, because your very deportment, right? Your rank, right, is a symbol of the sacrifices you've made, of the state of consciousness you are, the state of awareness. Because remember, in the control context, information is not always exposed freely in the compartmentalization of society and of information, right? Not everything is readily available. So a lot of people, it's through their symbolism, right, and through the symbolic iconography, through these logos, right, to these ranks, right, that to these positions, that they are identified in the greater context. That is why a lot of times people speak heavily of their positions, of their job, because it is a symbol. It is a symbol of the containment of a certain kind of energy, of a certain kind of function, awareness, right, or a certain kind of practice, right? So the symbolic is still very much evident and functional. I'll go further in saying that secret societies are these organized, let's say, elites and sub-elite groupings for whatever reasons, right? The earth is filled with many things. And so they tend to use the symbolic language because it is an ancient tongue. It is somewhat obscured in a great context by antiquity and by, the modern realities, that it serves them well to carry forth their message through symbolism. So symbolism in these organized groupings is the language in which they really speak. And we can abstract in premise, and symbolism is one context of that symbolism. The essence of deportment, again, wearing symbols on one's clothing, wearing some sign of one's allegiance that is very subtle yet present, is a sign of the symbolic language being employed by these individuals of these organizations. I mean, intent and purpose goes deep within human life. And who are we to judge? The Most High God always brings clarity to many individuals, regardless of the journeys that they've taken. So in essence, sometimes these symbolic journeys that people take, right, as their lives, as these positions they take, play out in life in the complete sense where they find meaning and finding themselves, right? Some people, through essence of simple devotion and absolute belief in God, is willing to take themselves as they are. Some people have had a long journey, so symbolic meanings have deeper resonance. Symbolism has deeper resonance. And as such, wanting to find hidden meanings, wanting to find information that is not readily available, that is not always in the sight or in the purview of the average individuals become a strong pursuit of a lot of these individuals. And so there's been a code, right? There's been a code, a very beautiful code, but somewhat grotesque as well too. A code, a language in symbolism, in the placement of the arms, the fingers and the arms at certain points on the body to symbolize deeply ancient belief systems in a lot of astral theology and a belief system in ritualism, sacrifice. So it is condensed, right, in just these hand signals, in just these little slight, delicate, overt demonstration of allegiance. Symbolic language, symbolic meaning, having resonance in these organized groupings, which are in some cases foundation stones of some of the societies, or a lot of the societies of this world. People say this is just the tip of the iceberg because essentially, like I said, symbolic meanings have gone back millennia, generations upon generations. And as such, because the greater context of when a society evolves, they take on, let's say, the Christian principle. Because I know when we speak about this, people are saying to us, well, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, that is just some event given to us by, Europeans. And I get the context in which they're trying to put everything in to fit a worldview, right? But the essence of it is when you relate Yeshua the Christ to the essence of life, right? People will not see it because they're saying, well, where's the eternity of it? Because they did not believe that it is a story, right? That as an event that is current, that is happening currently, that it is a part along the journey, that the journey started, right? And here it is that there's a new reality that is coming forward from all of the symbolic meanings, right? And the energies and the experiences we've had, right? Brought us in the ancient Hebrew culture to the experience we had. Then came Yeshua at a point in the destruction of the core values and the core structure of our society, right? Basically the invasion of external forces and basically bringing in their cultures, their ways of life into our way of life. Yeah, these things began to change our way of living. And as such, when Christ rose up to reclaim the antiquities, the anciency, therein start a new symbolic language that, if you look at it carefully, is a language of the old, the lamb to be slain. All the language that is relating to Christ is not just metaphoric, but it's also symbolic, right? And when you examine it, it is a metaphor that is in symbol, though is visual in the faith and the practices of the followers of Christ. But it is a new form of symbol. And as such, to decipher it is just as complex as it is to decipher the old ideas, ideations in the ancient books. Whether it be the book of Enoch, whether it be the Torah, whether it be the ancient scrolls of Abyssinia, whether it be these hidden Byzantine texts, right? Whether it be these clay tablets of Samaria, right? Whether it be these so-called writings from Atlantis that are on the copper plates, right? Whatever the symbolism of the age is, it is transposed into the new ideation, into the new representation. Christ the second Adam, a reclamation of an ancient but natural, godly reality that has spawned, was grown from the truth of life to become the way of life. Christ came to reclaim that way in a new symbolic meaning. Some say it is a metamorphic meaning. The essence is that to put man squarely back into the state of dominion and the state of his godly presence, or the state of the honor of the godliness within him. A new symbolic meaning. But because symbolism now is hidden within these, let's say, these elite or somewhat, covert organizations who have many intentions. So when they begin to bring about their ideology, because just like Christ has reclaimed the essence of the trueness, the natural way of things, the actual reality. They are trying to maintain the broken reality. So they are vanguards of that broken system, of that system of disorder, of the system of the fall. So because they are really vanguards of the fall, they are basically preserving that ancient ideation, right? The old wine. That's what they're preserving and getting drunk on it, right? Which caused them to have a certain kind of a ritualistic life that was symbolized in the ritualistic language through these symbols, right? Right? And these symbols are now transposed as the new images that are being, pervaded through a lot of pop culture, as a matter of fact, because they're being popularized. Because these organizations, they've got their creative branches, right? And these creative branches over the last maybe 70 or 80 years have gone wild in perpetuity of carrying forward a lot of these demonic symbolism, or these symbolism that are representing an idea on life, maybe based on hedonism, based upon pleasure. But again, I say, it only maintains the way of the fallen. That's what it's all about. In symbolism, they are just maintaining the ancient order of deception, confusion, of the dishonor of God. No man is pure, without fault. Am I speaking as if I'm some vanguard of the absolute purity? No, I'm saying these are the actual organizations. So do not conflate them with your own choices and your own fears and your own faults. Why is that? Why is that very important? Because all of us have faults. And all of us fail because of these faults. But let us not conflate these faults with these entities or the people who are sworn allegiance to these organizations, to these ideologies, and are direct and are very conscious and willful in their activities to hurt, to maim, to cause suffering, to distort at the highest level. Let us not conflate our negativity, our fears, and our mistakes with their direct evil activities, right? Belief systems through these symbolic languages that are filtered through their mouthpieces in entertainment. We're seeing that these symbolism have become part of pop culture. People are flipping up these ram horns and all these little six symbols and all these symbols which they think are of some great powerful resonance, which really it is just association with darkness and the dark culture and the culture of an insipid way of life, right? Now people have made mistakes based upon the fact that we've been led to it, and then they are willful mistakes. Now let's look at it. There's a lot of young people that are flipping up these signs. Do they know intrinsically what are the hidden meanings? Well, essentially the essence of them being symbolic, well, of course they don't know them. They are flipping them because they've been popularized by the context of the culture, right? And we already examined and have exposed that these cultural and pop culture attaches, right, are proteges of the orders, right? These secret orders, they are really their mouthpiece. And as such, they are the ones that are basically popularizing these symbolic meanings through music and movies and videos and such. So not to go away from that, but the essence of it is that when we see young people now, right, speaking the symbolic language, like basically in the clothing, right, because it's on the clothing, right, it's on the clothing, it's in the food, right, it's in the places we go, right, and because culture popularizes certain things, you realize that after a while, because you're flipping these symbols, you're associating with other people, the language begins to activate itself, the meanings become clear as your experience, you begin to associate, and the magnetism of that energy intensifies, right? So you begin to all of a sudden, through your growth in your career, in your path of entertainment, in your path of really mastery, you come into the vanguards of these organizations, which will approach you, right, and ask you to join their age-old tradition of the preservation of the antiquity. And some will tell you they're the true vanguards of the reality, the true vanguards of society, and they'll give you great meaning by showing you again the symbols in their actuality, what they mean. I mean, let's look at another symbol the spirit wants to be known. Tattoo. Tattoo is an ancient symbol, right? But what tattoos have always represented is that an encased, deeply encapsulating meaning, a representation of a people's sense of self. But a lot of times the tattoos were as a representation of going out of the order of the divine way. Because what they did was basically beginning to put the charms upon themselves, right? They began to put the mystical symbols upon themselves. And as they put these mystical symbols upon themselves, they became incantation unto the spirit, an invocation unto the spirit, and conjurers unto the spirit. right? So they were able to summon from the spirit world entities, right, by these charms and by these symbols, right? So the tattoo in the language of its greatest resonance, right, was deeply demonic as well too. Are definitely are not in its greatest context demonic. In its best context, a means of communing with the vibration fields, right? But have you ever noticed now how the language of tattoo has become like intensely demonic, right? It represents the intent of the culture, or certainly of the hidden culture, because they're using the symbols of that to carry forward their ideology, to carry forward their ideation, their belief systems, right? They're trying to work a specific kind of, ritual. And when people imbue these images on themselves, right, they are basically speaking these curses, in essence without words, right? It's pictorialized, right? Because the symbolic and the symbolic meaning goes to the core of what the essence of how we are made up. It passes just your conscious mind. It goes to the essence of your being. So symbolism is not just stir your outer consciousness, but to send deep reverberations or contact deep reverberations in your soul, right? To elicit from yourself a certain kind of life, a certain way of being, a certain way of actualization. It's almost basically manipulating yourself, right? So there are very deep layers, entrenched, embedded layers into symbolism. It's not just this surface-based analogy. It's far deeper. It's far more entrenched. So these vanguards of these cultures of symbolism, of maintaining these ancient orders, right, have gotten it through their mouthpiece to be popularized, and lots of generations are going around, basically, flipping these signs of these symbols, being drawn into more and more organizations, going up the corporate ladder, going up the ladder of success, master within all their fields in sports, in education, in other fields of education, going up through the parts of politics, the government, business, and they are being, recruited into an age-old ancient system of deception. But their symbolic language is all around us, right? These checkered boards of illusion are around us. Yeah? These light and shadows of illusions are around us every day, right? Showing allegiance, right? So after a while, if you continue to flip those symbols, ignorant man and woman, what you're doing is associating yourself with these orifices that are of no life. Essentially, they're about contravening life, manipulating life. And you might say, well, you might be the lucky few who will be masters of your reality. But is mastery about destruction of others for this selfness that you desire so much? Which is heavily promoted again in the way these symbolic meanings are preserved in these cultures. Not to say that all symbolism of antiquity was violent, deceptive, and had chaos and anarchy as its core tenets. No, it's not the case. But the ones that are being preserved in a lot, not all, of these organizations are such. Because the scale is always balanced. There are these antiquitous organizations who are trying to maintain order and are bringing forward information, again popularized through some of their mouthpieces again too, of which I'm no part, just to let you know, right? So to popularize their ideations too, right? To popularize their viewpoint of a balanced equilibrium, a true view of life and creation, whether they be religious or spiritual in nature or in intent. The essence is that they are there too, right? And their symbolic language and and meanings, hidden meanings, are pervading across the scope of multimedia, because that's where a lot of the symbolic meanings are coming to have resonance and coming to have relevance in people's lives, especially young people who see these popular mediums carrying forward, in life, what seems to be the fulfillment of life, and these symbolic gestures and and deportment and organized way of living seems to be bringing some kind of benefit. So a lot of young people are enticed, without truly searching, seeking, and truly knowing what the deeper meanings within these symbolism are, right? So they're sigil magic, they're spells, they're incantations, right? They're a way of confusing you, clouding your judgment, right? Holding you into a spiritual melees, right? There are many levels of examination of this spiritual language. Some people do not want to wear the clothes produced by others in certain societies, right? These things bring about an imbalance in economic benefits in some societies, so they wrestle and they cause lots of friction, and they have orders which are ritualistic, which is meant to break the energy of those people who promote such things, right? So they're always chanting a fire of evil or judgment in some cases, and they design clothing and things with the very essence of to destroy you, right? And if it's not sold in your society, then how could it destroy you? If it's not popularized around you, how could it destroy you, right? So these things are part of understanding what symbolic meanings are. And if you can read the symbolic language, then you can understand what is the direct intent of why some people never eat at some restaurants, why some people never ever drink certain drink, or why they never ever go to certain places, or why they never ever talk about certain people, or why they never ever 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 want to reason on what they believe. Because there's a system designed around the deciphering of all of your symbols, even if you're silent. So I hope you understand why I speak. Because who am I? I'm nobody. You understand me? But yet still, I come to see this. So if I remain silent, who am I pleasing? Is it pleasing me? Is it pleasing God? Is it chill? Who is it pleasing? It's pleasing no one that I should remain silent. So I speak. It's not to say that, oh, I am more brave than anyone. But what is bravery? It is some attachment to fear. I'm neither brave nor fear because that's not my interest. My interest is look around me. I'm a bushman, right? And I've been doing these videos as a correlation of my own journey and destiny in Christ. And this destiny have brought me to meet a lot of people, to interact with a whole heap of idea, both in symbolism and in actuality. Because a lot of people are symbols of, fulfillment, of fears, of wonder, of quandary, of our worst nightmares. A lot of that is contained in these ideas, in these manifestations as individual, of experiences as events. That's why we have dreams. Another symbolic language is through dreams, right? In Jamaica, they say dreams don't walk straight. So you can understand that there is a message. There is something being spoken here. There's a sense of all of the symbolic language. There is a meaning in it. There's a message. There's something being spoken to someone. Is it you it's been spoken to? There's a message sometimes being spoken against someone. Is it you the message is being spoken against? So essentially examine it. Get closer to exploring the essence of these symbolic meanings, these symbolic imageries, right? Not just in these itographs and these pictorials like we see in hieroglyphics or in ancient image-based languages, pictorial-based languages, or even trying to find a correlation in italics and how it is that our alphabet structure correlating sounds that hold meanings, right? But looking at how all of that symbolism of anciency have become a lot of how society is built, and why it is that some people function, because someone broke them into the line of awareness to realize what is the automaton, how it functions. And when they realize how it functions, a lot of times you'll find they're aligned, alleged to these organizations. That symbolism is their language of presentation and communication. Explore the symbolic languages. I've just touched on the surface. It's deep, it's intense, it's with intent. There's lots of things that needs exploration. That's the way in which the plans, the plots, the schemes of the enemy, and maybe even just the confused, are contained. It's flashing covertly and overtly in front of our eyes. If we stop long enough to examine the context, the pretext, you will see what is the actual reason why all these things are vying for our attention, to influence us, to have us act out a certain way of being, to let us show allegiance through these hand signals, these dress codes, right? And these verbose arguments we carry, right? That support the structure as it is and even exposes the ideology of the system as well, or the system of these hidden meanings. Blessings, love, honor. This has been Jerome Sage Butler, Reasonings right here at the Tree of Life, exploring symbolic meanings, exploring the language of symbolism. Explore it in your life, explore it in your experience, search it for true meaning, and be truly aligned with life, the Most High God, Yahuwah Yeshua, in grace and in honor. Continue on your path of absolute love and abundance. Be at peace with your true self, with your true nature. Trust in the divine way. It is actualized as your experience. Break those codes. Unlock those symbolic meanings to know what is actual from what is just belief. Know thyself. Love and honor. Until next time, you are a wonderful gift. An awesome joy to be in presence of. Continue to be this beautiful gift. Sharing that gift of beauty, sharing that gift of joy and love amongst one and another. Right? Until next time, love and blessings.